Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So we'll be reacting to Douglas Murray and says something big is about to happen in the UK. Well, let's check it out.
What we're seeing on the streets of the British cities, though, raises this question, as I say, of if the public keep saying something to the politicians and the politicians keep not just ignoring them but insulting them, what are they allowed to do, these people? These are populations that have every single election, like the rest of the British people, for 20 years, they have voted for less immigration and been told that they'd get it. And instead, it's just gone up. They've lived through an economy since 2008, where of the jobs created by the British government since 2008, so in the last, what, we're talking 16 years, of the jobs created since 2008, 74% have gone to people who were not born in Britain.
What happens when the public keeps voicing concerns, but politicians not only ignore them, but insult them? In a recent discussion, Douglas Murray dives deep into the frustrations brewing in British cities. Murray discusses the broader implications of this trend, touching on the cultural and ideological divide. The reluctance to address primary issues like mass immigration and integration leads to secondary problems, making the situation worse. He argues that the West's moral relativism and inability to critique different cultural values contribute to the ongoing crisis.
So just people think about this for a second. The government refuses to do what the public keep on asking for and what the government keeps on saying it'll do. It is seen to be, I think accurately, extremely lax on policing certain social cohesion issues. It's extremely eager to crack down on anyone of a Tommy Robinson type. And what material benefits have come about in the society in the last 16 years have largely gone to people who were not born in the country. I repeat, what is permissible in this situation to do? And I would say peaceful protesting would be one thing, or speaking up, or whatever you like to do, except that every time even there is a peaceful protest, the peaceful protesters are defamed as far right. But somehow the actual desire to tar anyone who has, as I say, not got a voice and is wanting to make their voice heard as a violent far right seems to me to be a big error by Keir Starmer and others. Because, if you can't say, we recognize your deep concerns, well, we understand your deep concerns, and we are going to try to get onto this and on top of this, but there is no excuse to turn out on the streets and be violent against your Muslim brothers and sisters and neighbors or anyone else. If they can't say that, they just cannot say it. They just have to go to the secondary thing. What kills me about this is, it's exactly what I've said for years. If you don't deal with a primary problem, you get secondary problems. And if you just focus on the secondary problem, you will you'll not only not solve the primary problem, you will make it worse. Exactly what we're seeing.
The first observation is that the epithet far right is rapidly losing its utility. Now, when I hear someone now described as far right, I think, yeah, maybe. Probably not, but maybe. So with regards to the drivers of immigration, you say the politicians campaign, at least on the conservative side, at least some of the time, with the claim that they're going to get a handle on this, but they don't. In fact, quite the opposite. They seem to facilitate it. And so then, is that because it's actually beyond their control? Or is it because, here's a psychological reason, it's like, for decades, our culture has insisted on something approximating a position of moral relativism. There's no way of drawing hierarchical distinctions between the value claims that different cultures present. We can't admit for a moment that there might be some reason to be leery, let's say, of an immigrant class that would be associated with the kind of education that the madrasas are producing for all sorts of ideological reasons. We can't make any allowance for the idea that some immigrants might be more difficult to integrate into our culture than others. And that is a thorny problem, don't get me wrong. But now, so we open the floodgates, let's say, and we find out that there are people who don't have democracies in their own country because they don't have the culture for it, let's say, or the desire for it. And they bring those attitudes along with them. Surprise, surprise, because they weren't just freedom-loving, oppressed people striving to be free, who are now thrilled to death to be in a democratic country, but people who are pretty damn prone to bring all of the problems that they had in their own country along with them. Now, and we're not supposed to say that. Now, my sense is the working class doesn't get to have their say, because if they had their say, everyone who's modern and liberal and tolerant in that pathological manner that accepts everything without distinction would have to do some serious digging into the understructure of their own belief systems and think, oh, well, and then that touches on something else. So the question first is, like, what the hell's driving the massive immigration into the West? Because we see it in Canada, maybe worse than anywhere else at the moment, or at a more rapid rate than anywhere else. Canada's so damn peaceful, it's hard to destabilize it, but we're working hard on that. So what's driving this, Matt? Is it the insistence? Is it this ideological insistence?
It's a lot of things. The one is, as I've warned about for a long time, one is something that isn't inevitable but is hard to resist, which is the simple ease of movement in the 21st century, the relative cheapness of travel compared to any previous century, and the knowledge through the devices we have in our pockets around the globe. I mean, what,
like, I don't know why. What's the most crazy about all this thing? Is it watching certain native-born British people literally celebrating their own destruction or what? Because I like, see, the British people, I just think people have the right to fight for your freedom of your country. People have the right. So why don't you fight for your country?
3 billion people are on WhatsApp alone. The ability of people anywhere in the world to discover the life of anyone else in the world easily. And add to that the fact that most countries in the world are not even remotely approximating either the safety or the wealth available in 21st century Canada, for instance, or Britain. And it's inevitable that a lot of people will want that. Now, as I've said for years, just because they may want it does not mean that Western liberal democracies can remotely be the place where everybody who wants a better life can or should go. It's simply impossible. And you just crunch the numbers on people in sub-Saharan Africa who want to move into Europe, for instance. And if that happened, if the third of sub-Saharan Africa who want to move moved, Europe would totally unrecognizable. Now, the second thing that comes from that is that it is extremely difficult for politicians to maintain their borders. And I think this is highly regrettable, because I think the only way in which, among other things, you can have an actual asylum system where you actually take in those unusual cases where asylum should be needed, just disappear once you have illegal migration every day coming in on boats, or as in the case of America, millions of people walking across the southern border in the last 4 years. And add to that the fact that, as was famously said in 1968 by somebody, it's the easiest thing to put off any difficult decision you have to make today and leave it for your successors to address, all the time making it harder for your successors. But I said this to a European politician some years ago when they said that they were going to deport the 1 million illegals that were in their country. And I said, how are you going to do it? Because you and I know that on day one, if you rounded up everyone who was legally in the country and put them on buses, trains, boats, the first woman or child crying would be on the front page of every newspaper the next morning. And by day 2, you would have to stop because of public pressure. That's just, it seems to be a reality for the time being. By the way, until such a time emerges, and it could, where the society says we don't give a damn anymore, we don't give a damn, that may well happen. But until that does happen, you know, countries are absolutely incapable, politicians are incapable of answering this question. Then you have a follow-on one, which addresses what you mentioned about Richard Dawkins, among other things, which is America. It's not quite true to say that America was a society based on an idea, but it's a nice idea. America was based on an idea, but the idea came about because of the people who founded the Republic, the United States of America. And if they hadn't...
Englishmen.
Right. If they had have been from somewhere else, even a different denomination, the United States would be very different. However, as far as states founded on an idea goes, America is probably the nearest to that. European nations, Britain, are not based on an idea. They were not based on an idea. Now, that isn't to say that they don't have very distinct cultures, and my word, the different cultures across Europe are so different that everyone jokes about their neighbors and regards their neighbor in the neighboring European country being wildly different from them. To an outsider, it seems preposterous that the Swedes and the Norwegians would have distinctions between them, but they do. But I say this to say that Europe and Britain was made up of ethnic identities. And those ethnic identities had ideas, of course. But even in Britain, you have the Welsh, you have the Scots, you have the English, the Northern Irish, the Irish. How do you integrate into that? How do you do it? Does anyone know? And the answer is no. Have some people? I'd say yes. Have a majority? It doesn't look that way to me. And so this is just a bomb underneath the societies in Europe in particular. It has been about ethnicity. We don't like things about being about ethnicity, so we say it's about an idea. But all my adult life, this idea has been so hard for anyone to pin down that they've just failed at it time and time again.
People by calling them far right. Is it going to bring any constructive decision at all? Is it going to bring any constructive decision? If anything, it shows how petty and disgusting the British government are, or the British government is. It's not much less anyone holding microphone with the ability to broadcast themselves as the purveyor of morality. The fact that the UK government is attempting to silence critics in America by threatening extradition goes beyond parody at this point. Really, it's really good. But sometimes I wonder why, because I know Douglas Murray have been saying it over the years, but nobody wants to listen to him. Nobody wants to hear what he's saying. Now, I think everything that he has been saying is coming to light now. Everything that he has been saying. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section about this. In the comment section, like, watch, and subscribe to my channel, and have a wonderful day ahead. See ya. Bye bye.